What is up, game theorists? This is episode 119.2. This is the main topic, the in-depth analysis of this week's podcast.
Yes.
Dude, yeah, Good Samaritans in video games. Everybody's had one of these experiences, right?
Yes, I think my first one was in World of Warcraft. Where was yours?
My first memorable one was there too, yeah. What was yours?
So we were hanging out, and this was like, to this day, I still remember this. We're hanging out, we're level 15 or so, right? We're just starting the game, and we're in probably the second little village. And this guy runs up out of nowhere, and he's hopping. And we're like, who is this guy? And he's like hopping up and down, and he comes up and he goes, hello, like all caps. And we're like, hey, buddy. And he goes, kobolds found camp. And we're like, oh, good. He goes, follow, but it was spelled like FOLO. We're like, what? And he starts hopping away, and we're like, who is this little guy? So we followed him, and
like Alice after the White Rabbit.
yeah, he's just like, follow, kobold camp, follow. And we're like, what is happening here? So we just wandered off after this guy and cleared out a kobold camp with him. And he was pretty excited. And then he just running around like a little sprite, just bouncing around, and then he eventually lost track of him. So in that case, I think we were probably the Good Samaritans, because I don't know if he was helping us so much as we were helping him, but it was the strangest little encounter I've ever had in World of Warcraft. Kobold camp, follow.
Oh man, I remember there's a couple. One was in World of Warcraft, but not to step on those toes, I'll tell that one in a second. One was Counter-Strike. I was playing Counter-Strike, and there was this guy who was really good. I played on a server one time, and this dude wrecked us on the other team, just not even trying. He would end up running around with a knife and knifing us on occasion. And I played, like, I was serious about the game. I played on a high level, not like Cal or anything, but like I played with some legit people, because I put a lot of time and practice into it. I wasn't pro level at all, but I was, at the top of the amateur pile. So
yeah, this is what you do with games. You get really excited about them, and you play them a lot to where you're not quite pro, but you're better than any amateurs.
yeah. I never make that leap into full life dedication.
Yeah, that like 40 hours a week of practicing that it takes to take that transition, but you get as far as you can go while still having a life.
Yeah. And so this guy, his name was M2 Farm or something really weird, but he came through and he knifed our whole team. Like, just to put that in perspective, that's insane. But anyway, so this guy was just amazing. I was like, who is this guy?
He was Kirito on Sword Art Online, just way overpowered.
Yeah, this all of a sudden you'd be sitting there behind the box waiting, and it'd be like ting ting, and it'd be like a flashbang, and you're like, what the? And then it's just like knife kill.
Then like the camera pans out to his room, and he's on his computer, and he's like, yeah, just doing like the heroic music. It's like la da 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 da, and he's like, ah.
Yeah, this is what happened. So anyway, I ended up friending that guy because later, I randomized team, and I got on his team, and I was like, dude, you're legit. What's up? And he wouldn't answer at first, but after a while, I just kept, saying things like this fucking guy, and eventually he said, yeah. But one time I was playing on a server, and I was like, and I was on Steam, so I was like, dude, you want to play with this game with me? We're getting wrecked. And he goes, sure, and he joined in and just starts wrecking the enemy team. He had no reason to be there. He's probably on some competitive server, but I thought that was fun. But a more memorable, better example, I think, would be in World of Warcraft as well. It was in, we were headed to Shadowfang Keep, which, if anyone played World of Warcraft and has been on the Alliance side, they know how shitty this can be. You land at this little, boat, or I think you fly. Yeah, you fly, and then you have to run, up a little and run along this long path, and it's all contested territory, and we're on a PvP server. So we're going through, and we're humans. We're these shitty little. I mean, we just started playing this game since the wipe and the launch, and we're playing. And this Tauren comes up right out of nowhere, and you can see him in the background. And you're like, oh no! And you don't have a mount at this point, so you're like, you start running. You're like, oh no! And
running you down.
and you're like, just and you're typing in, because back then, we didn't have voice comms really. We didn't use them much. And I was like, split up, enter, split up, run. Because it's just a matter of, it's like a lioness with a bunch of crippled gazelles. It's just a matter of time. Just let them get as few as possible. So we all started splitting up, and this Tauren just coming over the hill, just beelining straight for us. And I was like, well, here goes nothing. So I was like, well, fuck it. If it's going to be someone, it might as well be me. So I turn around and I just start beelining into him. And I'm thinking, I'm going to hold him off for a second. I'm going to make this last stand, and my friends are going to get away. And I'll run for the body. It's no big deal. So I run, and I'm like, here we go. Woo! And I was avenging Paladin, and I was like, here we go. I pop all my stuff, and I was like, ah! And I go to hit him, and I got my finger on the bubble button. The second I hit him, the PvP flag was already up. And he just goes like that, and I disappeared. And I was like, I didn't hit the bubble, so I didn't even slow him down for my team. He literally remounted right away and probably killed everyone. And so eventually we're just like, what the hell? So I start we start typing over the chat, the area chat, and eventually someone was like, he's like, what's going on? And we're like, this Tauren is like spawn camping us, and he's just destroying us. And they're like, oh, he's sitting on your corpses? He's like, yeah. And he's like, where are you? And I was like, oh, we're just outside of that town. And he's like, I'm on my way. And I was like, yes. And so he comes in and just like wrecks this Tauren guy, and then he just keeps spawn camping him all the way back to his wherever the area was. And I remember just thinking, I was like, that's the guy I want to be whenever I get high level.
Like, thanks, man. Like the little hero ruffling your hair as he runs by, and you later grow up to be Robin.
He's standing there just covered in blood. He's looking off in the sunset, waiting for him to respawn. And we're like picking things off our own corpses. And they're all like broken now because they've been hurt so many times. And we're like, this is going to be a hell of a repair bill. Thanks, buddy.
No, it's the scene where Mace Windu in the Jenny Tartakovsky Clone Wars cartoon, where he like wrecks the entire droid army by himself and then leaps up and like lands on that hilltop next to the little kid. And the little kid's like, ah, and gives him a little canteen. That was us. We were that little kid with the canteen.
Yep, that was us. So that guy was really nice. Like that guy went out of his way, presumably doing something in the game worthwhile, and then he came all the way over us and helped us just because. What reason? What could possibly be the reason?
Yeah, that's the most recent one for me was Attack on Titan. It's the online 3DS game that Joseph, my brother, and I are playing, and we're like fairly high level, but we're not the max level, and we're still having some troubles. We're at the mission we're doing is like taking out these super titans, and they harden the napes of their necks, so it's hard to kill them. And Joseph we usually play like private groups, so it's just the two of us, but he had forgotten to turn on the privacy setting so anyone could jump in the group. And this guy jumped in, and we're all wearing like the shitty like Survey Corps uniforms, like the brown jackets and like the white pants and the little sash, and we're like, yeah, Survey Corps. And this guy comes in and he's dressed like a freaking ninja. He's like all black with like this weird black scarf, like these weird costumes I'd never seen before. That I was like, what? Where'd you get that equipment? He's just like, and there's no voice chat on this because it's 3DS, so he just comes in and there's like 6 preset things you can say, and he's like, oh, because it's all in Japanese, and it goes hello, and we're like, oh, hi, and he goes, let's go. And we're like, okay, so we jump into the mission. He's just wrecking everything, and then he just kind of stays in our team even though we're way lower level than him. He's not getting any worthwhile loot or any experience or anything. He's already max level and he's got everything he needs, but he just sticks with us and he's killing all these titans for us. And then at the end he's like, good job, and he's all like encouraging us. And whenever and whenever like some guy grabs me, like a titan will grab me out of the air and he's about to put him in my mouth and put me in his mouth, and he's just like, oh, and I'm like, oh god, I'm like mashing the buttons trying to get free, and then all of a sudden the camera shifts and you see this like black ninja shooting towards me on this 3DS, and like it's coming, like the camera's like so you can see his face coming at the camera, and he's like shooting towards me, and I'm like, oh, and he's like, oh, so good, and he starts spinning, and then like he cuts me free, and I'm like, oh, and it's all slow motion, there's blood everywhere. And then like he loops around, and before the hand even hits the ground that was clutching me, he's looped around to the back of the guy's neck, and he like does this weird spin move and cuts it, and the Titan goes down and dies. And I'm like, oh my god, he goes, oh, and he just like leaps away. And every mission, because we were playing this one mission because Joseph wanted to get an A+ on it, and he just couldn't, he kept getting an A, so we kept repeating the same mission over and over, and he just kept coming back, and he's like, hello, good work. Because we got like 6 options, and he goes, oh, thank you. There's just like, for like an hour and a half of his time, he just escorted us through these titans and then just vanished mysteriously without a trace. And then and so that's what got me thinking about this topic, because Joseph was like, wait, what prompts somebody to do that? He got nothing out of that. He was no experience, no loot. He just popped in, saved us all, and then disappeared without a trace. And I was like, you know what? That's not the first time that's happened. It seems to happen a lot in online games. You'll just get these people who just, for no in-game reward, for no mechanical reward, for no loot, no gold, no whatever, they just show up like superheroes in the night, and they leave without saying a word. I never said thank you, and you'll never have to. Just poof, poof. So what's going on with that? This good Samaritan streak.
Another good example of this that's probably happened to everyone, because those were pretty anecdotal and possibly very rare, but there's one that's probably happened to everyone that's played an MMO or a lot of competitive games, you get someone who says this over like a general chat somewhere, or maybe in like in a voice comm somewhere, and they're like, "Hey, I'll speed run you guys through a dungeon, or I'll do something that I gain nothing from it, and you guys can have all the loot."
World of Warcraft had a lot of those where it's like, hey, or Knights of the Republic, there was always somebody who's just like, hey, going through this dungeon if anyone needs gear. And you're like, wow, you're level 80, that's a level 20 dungeon. Thanks, man.
So I've got a theory, but mine has a specific bent to it. Have you ever done that? Have you ever speed run someone through, or been like the knight in shining armor flying in?
Yeah, but usually not for complete strangers. Like, I'll do it for friends, but I've rarely just been like, oh, because you've got stuff to do. Even at high level, you've got daily quests and stuff. I've never been like, you know what, fuck all that. Today I'm going to the low level area and I'm just gonna babysit some lobies.
Oh, I've done it before. Like one time I was flying over Booty Bay in World of Warcraft, and at this point I was like level 80 or something, and I'm flying over, and I was like, well, look who the fuck it is. It's Mr. Skirmish between two factions. Hello, Mr. Skirmish between two factions. My name is a holy priest. And I like land in the middle of them, and I was like, get fucked! And I just exploded and like killed everyone. All the bad guys with just holy novas. I just holy nova spam. It's a shitty spell that like mana intensive. But I just wiped their whole team and healed our whole side just by holy novaing like crazy.
Yeah, I'll do that if I happen to see something, but I've never been like, oh, today I'm going to fly to this area and just be the guardian angel. But if I'm in the area, and there's a certain factionalism, right? Like, this is what makes World of Warcraft a little bit different from Attack on Titan, is like you feel a sense of kinship with the Alliance. Like, if somebody's shitting on the Alliance, you're like, oh, fuck that, the Horde. They've got that us versus them mentality. Yeah. So even though it doesn't really give me anything, I do feel like I'm helping the home team when I'm killing the Horde.
But yeah, that's not the case inside of a dungeon or something.
Yeah, or in Attack on Titan, where it's just there's no factions. It's just we're all in it together. So yeah, I don't know. I have sort of by happenstance helped people out, but those people who, like, we've had friends who are the opposite, like the ones who'll go and prey on the weak, like they'll just spawn they'll be the Taurens in your story who will just spawn the newbies on the other team and just make their lives miserable until somebody stops them.
Yeah, and then you get those same people. I liken those to those people like who join. So there's it's servers and natural selection, and there was understanded servers in a lot of other games, like let's say Counter-Strike, since we're using that example. You get these like really competitive servers, these Cal servers or these pro servers, and then you get these servers that are like considered kind of more newbie-ish. Like, so if you're looking for good games to get better, you're not going to join these. These are for people who are just kind of the rank and file of the game. But occasionally you get these people who come in there, or look at games like League of Legends with Smurfs. You get these people like that where they're really just preying on people lower level than them.
Right, like they're not getting any better at the game. They're not getting any in-game reward. They're just making a new player miserable. And you'll see that in MMOs. You'll see that in any kind of online competitive game, StarCraft, Heroes of the Storm, anything that you can make a Smurf account in. Like, some people just get their jollies out of showing up and ruining some new player's day. And then this is kind of the opposite thing, where people show up and like save the day for new players or teach them how to play, right? Like, you'll see that too, where it's like, hey, if anyone needs any help, like I'll teach you how to beat this thing. Like, they just go out and try and help other people get better at the game for no reward.
I think it's different in form, but same in function. Honestly, I think you are okay. So in games, and you've heard of this. I can't remember what the exact term is, or if there is one. But it's kind of like as you get better, the challenges are the same. So like, look at D&D. The first time you go into a dungeon, you walk in, it takes about maybe 3 good hits from your striker to take out a big bad, right? You just got to keep them alive, and you got to manage some stuff. And as you get bigger, it's still about 3 power hits, 3 whatever super power hits it is. If you can get all 3 of those like dailies off or whatever, he's good.
Especially in 4th edition, no matter what level you were, it was basically the same kind of math underlying it. So as long as the monsters were the same level as you could count on 3 or 4 good hits taking something down.
Right, or in Final Fantasy, like it's going to take more hits, but you've got more survivability and you've got more options. You got utility to keep you alive, but it's still the same thing. It's like the difficulty is about the same, right? Like as you play through. So as you get stronger, the monsters get stronger. You just have more options available to you. So after doing that for a while, so super high level characters have been doing that for months, on end. And you've got to think to yourself occasionally, like, I wonder what it's like to go back and fight those early monsters. Like only because you want to see how far you've progressed. So
right, you want a measurable, like tangible feel of the power you've gained, because the
right.
monsters are going on that same treadmill as you, so it never feels like you're getting stronger. But if you go back to those first goblins in level
Yeah.
1,
And this happens occasionally in like running too. Like sometimes you'll hear these like professional runners that have sponsorships and stuff, and they'll be like, well, I just ran this the Peachtree or some like smaller race because I wanted to place first. It's been a while, so I just want to do that. Like there is something to gain from it, even though the competition isn't there. It's more of like it's almost like the notches on a wall. Like like I keep growing, but what is it? I want a reminder of how far I've come, and it's nice to be able to be Superman occasionally. Imagine you're Superman, but you're on Krypton, so you're not doing anything.
right?
Occasionally, it'd be nice to go shoot off and just check off there. So I think there's that happening whenever they're preying on weak people, because it's like, whoa, I can wreck these people. This is what I used to be. Now I'm way above it. But then the good people, I think the people who want to run you through dungeons, the same sort of thing. I did that once as a mage. I ran through and I just used Arcane Blast over and over. I just jumped around, Arcane Blasted. And then when the enemy came, I was like, oh, well, here we go. And I did my...
And we do that for each other. Like, I usually would be the guy with like I would overlevel one character on accident because I just played too much on that character. And I'm like, this is now my dungeon run character. So anyone that wants to go through a dungeon, let me know. And
yeah. It feels kind of good to like, see the mastery of the game you've gotten by now.
And to kind of help your friends avoid the grind that you had to go through. It's like if you're the first person across a river, like you feel pretty good, but if you build a bridge across the river, then nobody else has to go through that toil that you had to go through.
Yeah, so there's this thing called social comparison theory, and this is the way it works. People who typically get better and better at things do upward social comparison. So, like let's say you start running today.
Mm-hmm.
And you start running, and you might compare yourself to the next, like, oh, I've got this friend who runs and, she's pretty good. She runs these, like all these different days, but she's pretty fast. Well, one day you catch up to her. You can do one of two things at that point, or one of three things. One, you could just be, okay, I'm good. This is where I want to be, which isn't too common, I don't think. I don't know the numbers on that, but then, or you could go the next one up. You're like, oh, because as you get into another group of runners, they're like, oh, well, we're going to be running, this 5K and we're going to try to place. And you're like, oh, placing sounds fun. I want to do that.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, yeah, I'll push a little harder. So you keep, and as you get that next step, then you're like, oh, well, what about 10K? Maybe we can do a 10K for distance. And then you do it for distance. And you're like, maybe we can do it for time. And then you keep thinking up, right?
It's like when you hit the level cap. Like your first thing is getting to level 70 and you're like, okay, I'm at level 70. And then you either stop playing the game or you say, okay, now I want to get the epic gear that everyone's collecting. And then when you get the epic gear, you're like, now I want to get the next tier of epic gear. So there's always like another level you can climb past that cap.
And as you get into each skill stratosphere, basically, you're going to get people who are on their way up to the next one. And either you're going to identify with them and be like, yeah, that sounds pretty fun. So you're subjected to new aspirations. And either you attach to those and compare yourself to them and go, yeah, I want to be on that level. Or you just stop and say, no, this is good. Or you can even do down. But most of the time, people who do social comparison down, everybody has this friend, right? You've got this friend or family member who's like, well, I've got this, like, oh, man, my life's pretty bad. Yeah, I'm smoking like friggin' crack and stuff, but I only smoke it once a day. And I've got friends who do it all the time. And it's like,
Can always find a bar that's low enough to where you feel like you're an Olympic hurler.
Yeah, and it has some fun. I mean, it has some help, like because it's good for your self-evaluation of yourself. Your self-esteem is going to be pretty high, despite the fact that it's not tied to actual achievement. But you're going to be like, oh, well, at least I've got some comfort in that. Alternatively, social or upward social comparison will let you do things like, you'll become more depressed. You hear people all the time, like there's this girl named Carrie Goucher who's a runner. She's an Olympian, right? And this year she ran for the first time in a while, and she was like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. This is my last hurrah, right? I'm gonna do it as best I can. So she trains like crazy, and she makes fourth, which is the alternate. So she makes on the Olympic team, but she was like, no, I wanted third. And so she started crying, and we got depressed. I was like, maybe I should quit running. I'm like, you made the Olympic team for running. That's awesome, Yeah. And it's those sorts of upward social comparisons that can cause you to be depressed and, rob yourself of a lot of meaning. But it also helps drive competition and your performance. But occasionally, whenever you're one of these upward social people, who keep like going, oh, I want to be the next level, occasionally it's nice to look down and go, wow, look how far I've come. And I think this is a very real example of doing that. And whenever you're with these people, you get to realize that you're on one metric, you're on a higher scale than them. So like, for example, one time I had a friend get into natural selection 2. The game's very high skill cap, like very high. And so he's like, man, I just don't know I'm going to join this rookie server. And I was like, good luck. And he's like, well, it's really complicated, and I'm getting my butt kicked. I'm not going to play. And I was like, fuck it. You know what? I'll just join. I'll join and I'll play, and I just I could walk into a hive by myself and just kill the entire enemy team, which is, you know, pretty unheard of in a regular play. But because I'd played so long and these people were just rookies, they just joined, you know, I was destroying them, and I felt guilty about it. But there was a part of me that I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Like, I feel invincible just walking in here. It's that comparison of like where you're at. It reminds you how high you are on that specific social hierarchy. And I think both ways do that. The white knighting, you know, being able to fly in as the white knight and be like, what's up, bro? I got this. And also the one where you walk in and you're the black knight. You're like, what's up? I got you, you know?
Right. So what do you think is more common, the white knights or the black knights? Because that I can see the appeal for both, like just that idea of feeling powerful and getting a visual reminder of how far you've come. But there might be data on this, there might not be, but what do you think anecdotally is the more common of the two?
Do you mean in video games or real life?
In video games.
I think in video games you're probably going to see a larger proportion of black knights, but I think, I don't know. That's an anecdotal thing. I think black knights, honestly. What about you?
I don't know. My initial inclination was black knights, but I think it feels like black knights are more common because they wreck your day so hard when they show up, so you notice them more. Sort of that what's that fallacy where you think plane crashes are going to be the leading cause of death, whereas driving to the airport is way more dangerous.
Oh yeah. I don't remember.
It's some kind of cognitive bias where we just notice the things that wreck our day more, or where it feels like you're always in the slow lane of traffic because that's when you start paying attention to how fast everyone else is going. But when you're in the fast lane, you're not really noting it.
Yeah.
So I think it might be something to do with that. Whereas when a black knight, when an evil character shows up and just starts wrecking your day, like that ruins your day, and that's going to be something you remember for the whole week.
Right.
Whereas when some guy's on general chat going, "Hey, anyone need help running through so and so keep?" Like if you don't actually need help, you tune that out.
Yeah. Plus, you also get the fact that this bugs me. I'll play with on Here's the Storm, for example. Any team-based game you get in, you're gonna have varying levels of skills on your team, right? Like it's gonna happen. And occasionally I'm the worst person on the team, but occasionally I'm the best person on the team. And when I'm the best person on the team, there's one thing that bugs me. I try not to be this guy so much when I'm the worst person on the team. Is you're the best guy on the team, you're playing, and you just set up all these plays. Like you just set up all the plays, and then you make it so that your damage dealer, your ADC or whoever it is, cannot be touched as you're the tank or you're the support or something like that. And you set up all these kills, but obviously through your ult, you capture everyone like a mosh pit or something, and then he annihilates everyone. And at the end of the game, he's like, "Whoa, look at my score! I had so many kills and I never died. I am so good." Then I'm like,
yeah, that would happen to me on World of Warcraft all the time. I'd be like a priest and I'd join a dungeon group. I'm like, "Holy shit, I am wrecking. We had no casualties. I am such a good warrior. I'm such a good hunter." And I'm like, what? Because you're in the background like subtly healing, and like a good priest is the one that you don't notice he's there, because if you just heal ham, then you're gonna draw the enemy aggro and it's gonna end up getting you killed.
Right.
So you're just like sitting there and just kind of like subtly throwing things out there, and you're waiting until they're almost dead before you heal them. So they always feel like they're on the verge of death, and they're like, "Oh man, that was rough. Good thing we played so hard. Can't believe we survived that." I'm like, yes, that was weird how you survived that. You were wiping a lot before you recruited me. That's weird.
Right.
How suddenly you got really good at the game on that 5th try.
And they're only attending because you can only attend to so many things at once. You have your attention, and you're only attending to your mechanics because you're like, "Oh my gosh," and you're not looking at your health bar,
your rotations. You're watching it. Your damage numbers, and
you occasionally check in with your health bar. And if it's always topped off, you're like, "Oh, I'm winning, right? I'm just killing it." And those sorts of things. I'm like, "How about you? How about this? How about occasionally you attend to the green numbers popping above your head or something like that, or just look back and be like, "Oh, our priest is complete, or our healer is completely out of mana. How could that be if he's never healed anyone? Oh wait, I've taken a lot of damage and haven't died." Like, just fact check yourself occasionally. But
yeah, so I think that maybe the white knights are at least as common. Maybe it's my optimism for human nature, like coloring it. But I think maybe what happens is we notice the shitheads more than we notice the unsung heroes.
I like your optimism, and it's like what we say in ACT or in a lot of therapy. It's like, what good does this buy you? So, for example, like if someone cuts me off in traffic, I can think one of two things. I could think, "Fuck this asshole! What the hell? What a piece of shit! He intentionally or she intentionally cut me off and is being an asshole," or he's completely ignorant, right? A negative thing about that person. Or I could be like, they're probably in a hurry, or they probably just didn't notice. I'm sure they wouldn't have done it if not. We have no way of knowing which one of those is true. I have no way of knowing which one is true. I'm just gonna assume the other one because it's better on me. It's like whenever
Yeah.
that old Buddhist saying of like whenever you hang on to iron to anger, it's like holding onto a hot coal. The only person it hurts is you, right?
Mhm.
You're not the other person can't read your mind. They don't know. Maybe you honk at them and yell, but then what does that do? Reactivity, so, right? Psychological reactivity. I'm gonna be like fuck you. So
Right.
it only helps me to think good about people, even if it's false.
Have you
than
ever
to
been completely in the wrong in a traffic thing and somebody honked at you and you immediately were like, fuck that guy. That guy's an idiot, even though it was a well-deserved honking?
Yeah.
Like your
Yeah.
initial reaction isn't like, you're right. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
it's got a purpose, right? An evolution. Like imagine like a primate or someone or anything comes up to you and goes like that. Your best bet is to be like back, right, to
Right.
get ready to fight. Your body's going, oh, I need to protect myself. This thing's about to attack me, so it pumps you up too.
Right.
It's just we should be able to check ourselves after that and be like, oh, that's just my central nervous system doing its job. Thanks, buddy, but wrong situation.
Yeah. Like I'll get honked at. I'll honk right back and be like, you little, and then I'll pull into the parking lot and like run it through my head. Oh no, wait, no, I was the dick there. He was right to call me out.
Yeah, and it always stings, but
yeah. So
Good Samaritanism. You're familiar with the study on that, right? Let's so now I can inject the psychology part of it.
yes, bring us some science.
Some science. So you've got the social comparison theory. We already talked about that I think is going on. This allows you to occasionally look back down the ladder and go, oh, that's
See
where
how
I
far
used to
you've come.
Yeah, and go. I'm better than those people. That feels good. But also you've got the fact that people do good things for different reasons, and as is the staple of all psychology, we don't know why the fuck we do things.
Mm-hmm.
The National Institute of Mental Health wouldn't be dishing out millions of dollars to determine why people do things if people already knew. Mm-hmm. But the weird thing is we think we do know. Do you have any inclination why that is? I might not have to explain this.
Why we think we know what we do?
Yeah.
Because it's terrifying if we're faced with the reality that we're just reacting on things that we don't understand why we're doing them. It gives us a sense of control, like a feeling of like I'm the master of my destiny if we feel like we're in the driver's seat of our decisions.
Right, yeah. And then there's no way to test those theories objectively through our natural inclination of approaching the world. Because we think, oh, I did this because we do something, and then somebody goes, hey, why did you just run over that? Or why did you want to just, like flip that guy out? Or not flip that guy. It has to be something more subtle. But why did you just cut off that guy in line? Like, you guys were in the thing. And you didn't notice you did it. And then you go, huh. And you'll see them kind of further brow, and they think about it, and they go, oh, because, and they tell you why. And you're like, you don't know.
You don't know. That's your theory.
You're thinking, yeah, and that seems reasonable. But how did you, as you were thinking in your head, let me just figure out that process. Was there any point where you were like, why did I do that? And then you're like, was it because I'm a dick? No, it's not because I'm a dick. Like, what makes you know that it's not because you're a dick? Like, what is it that's selecting the correct answer? Well, it's the one that's most reasonable. So whenever you think about it and you go, yeah, that's most reasonable with the way I see myself, then you select that one. But is that why you did it?
Well, because I'm not a dick. It's not my identity.
And if so, then how do people like me manipulate people by changing environmental variables? I mean, if
everybody drink.
No, yeah. Why? What'd I do?
You said a sociopath thing.
Oh, no, people like me, my profession, like we help people get better by manipulating their environment or helping them manipulate their own environment. But yeah, so we don't know why we do things, but we make these theories. So like so whenever we make these theories, we say, oh, I did this because of this. And then because of confirmation bias, we're not good at figuring out if that's not true. We're good at figuring out if that is true. Or, no, we're good at proving it is true to ourselves. So we go, oh man, I did this because of this. How do I know that? Because remember that one time I helped that other person, so I'm someone who helps people. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, do you? But we don't ask this question, this next one. But do I? What are times I haven't helped other people?
Way more often, turns out.
Yeah. So am I really this person? Okay, no, I guess I'm people that help, or someone that helps people in some situations. What are those situations? Oh, in these situations, whether it's a public, there's a lot of reasons for pro-sociality. I won't get into it, but yeah. So the other part of that is this. So there's a Good Samaritan study that's really famous that I imagine most people have heard. Have you heard this one? The one about the in the seminary they did with the students of they were studying religion.
No. Wait. Is this the one where is this a study or an anecdote? Because I've heard this told as like a anecdote 1,000 different times. It's like it's like if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's like the one where it's like, and then the the atheist professor said to the veteran soldier, like one of those stories that just gets repeated over and over again. Where it's the one where the guy's teaching the New Testament, and the people show up, and he's like, the final's on the other side of town, or on the other side of campus, and you have 5 minutes to get there or you're going to fail the final. And then on the way to the final, people keep seeing people in need, like a little girl fell off her bike and they have comfort them, or somebody lost their dog. There's all these little situations to stop and make yourself late to help somebody. And then the people who ignore all those and get to the class on time to take the final actually fail the final, because it turns out, what would Jesus do besides flip out and like whip people at the temple? He would have helped those people. Yeah. And you guys did not learn anything from this New Testament course. Is that what you're referring to, or is that a different?
That's a different thing. It sounds like it might be based on the experiment, though. So there's an experiment done in the 70s or 80s. Can't remember when, but and it's pretty famous. A lot of people have heard of it, and there's a lot of people who haven't. But what happened was, there's a lot of people who think they do things they think they're a good Samaritan for the reason that they heard about it in the Bible, and then they do it, right? Mm-hmm. Like you hear a lesson, and then you learn from it. But that's just mostly not true. That's something we found through subsequent studies. But this specific study was, they went to a religious studies religious studies university, and at this religious studies university, they said, "Hey, we're with we're going to have you guys give a speech in the other room, in the auditorium," and they're in a different room, and across a little ways across campus. And they say, "So we're going to have you give this speech, and it's going to be about one of two things." So there's a couple different variables here. One is the content of the speech. One, the speech was about being a good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan story, just tell about it. Mm-hmm. The other half of people would tell a story about religious. It's irrelevant. It's a control condition. So it's something like being religious in general, or something like that. Mm-hmm. Then the other okay. So after they told these two different groups the two different things they'd be talking on, they said, but here's the other thing they manipulated: how much time they had to get to the auditorium. So they said, "Hey, you got to go. You're already late." That's condition one. Mm-hmm. Two was, you've got some time, but you got to go. You got to go pretty quickly. So you've got just enough time to make it. Mm-hmm. Three, you got plenty of time, but get over there. Your speech needs to be good, right? And they're like, okay. And both were told, that you're going to be evaluated on your speech to give it some depth, so that they had some reason to get there and have a performance. Right. So they also measured. Here's the things they measured on the people. They gave them a questionnaire beforehand, and they didn't say it like that. They just said, "Hey, we're interested in what kind of speakers we're having, so we're going to give you this questionnaire to look at this." And they measured things like religiosity. They measured things like how important it is to you to follow the principles of being a good Samaritan, things like a bunch of other questions. Mm-hmm. And so of those groups, what do you think was the most important factor to determine? Because I forgot to mention this, in between the auditorium where they're going to give the speech and the classroom where they were introduced to this, task, there's a person laying there, and the person was instructed to do these things. He's supposed to moan. He's supposed to, go. He's leaning against the door, laying on the ground, kind of leaning against. I'm sorry, not the door, the wall. And he was literally placed in the middle of the hallway so that the person had to step over him. And the person's moaning and saying, "Oh," and there's no one else around. It's just this person. So the person had to run across campus. There's just one person. The person looks like they need help. The guy looks pretty rough. Mm-hmm. He's meant to look pretty like homeless, sort of, or just in trouble. So of those people, what do you think was the most important variable in helping the individual?
So the variables are religiosity, how much time they have to get there, and what they're talking about.
And how committed they say they are to their religious ideals, and how much of a good person they believe themselves to be. There's a bunch of questions on the questionnaire.
I would say intuitively it would seem like whoever, like the amount of time they had to get to their speech was the biggest predictor.
Mm. Yeah, that's true. The content of the speech didn't matter. So whether they were giving a Good Samaritan speech or not didn't matter. Also,
yeah, I was wondering if there'd be a priming effect there, but I was like, no, I think it's probably going to be how much time they have, and then they're going to come with reasons why they could or could not stop, based around everything but how much time they had.
Right. Even when they were explicitly giving a speech about people who stepped over other people on their way through other things, it did not matter. And their description of whether they believe religion to be very important or not, or the aspect of helping people, none of that predicted that. People just gave time when they had time. They just helped the person when they had time.
So that's the biggest predictor, is like the people who had plenty of time helped in general, and the people who were rushed tended to not help in general, no matter what they said on their questionnaire or what they were talking about.
Or how religious they said they were. So the main effect is that, do you help people when the opportunity presents itself? The answer seems to be when you have time.
Yeah, when it doesn't fuck up your day too badly.
Right, exactly. Now there's a lot of things
that pans out for me. I've helped people, like, homeless people, or people who are hungry and standing by the side of the street with signs. Like, my biggest predictor tends to be looking back. Am I in a hurry to be somewhere, or am I kind of leisurely driving somewhere?
Right, which is funny, but it goes into the. Then again, and what did you say to yourself after you helped someone? Like maybe gave him some money or drove him somewhere.
Oh, I say to myself, like, I was about to splurge on myself for something, so of course I can spare $6 for this guy's lunch. That's fine. If I'm going to spend $50 on a video game for myself and not spend $6 on this guy, I'm a shitty person.
Yeah. You put it. It's fundamental attribution error. You kind of think like, I'm a good person. Typically, most people say, at least. And then other people who are a little more savvy to psychology are like, man, there must have been something that spawned this in me. And like, oh wait, I've got some extra time, or I've got some extra money. I have the resources to spare, and it has very little to do with my ideals. And so this is one of these kind of similar articles.
When I'm late for something, I just avoid eye contact. I'm like, all right, I don't have time to deal with this right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. and then I remind myself of the last time I did help somebody, and I'm like, oh, I'm good to skip a couple of these guys.
Yeah. So let me see. Yeah, I just want to make sure those are all the pertinent findings. They were, and in fact, people who said that they had, the only other one that had a minimal effect was people who said they had religion as a quest, which is one of the kind of questions was, do I believe that religion is like a quest in my life where I everything I do is important. That it had a very, very, very small effect. So like the same sort of effect. It's considered probably vestigial, or not vestigial, an artifact finding, because we haven't been able to replicate that. But in that original study, and it was in 1973, by the way, they found that the largest effect size was clearly from the time manipulation, which was against their hypotheses. This was counterintuitive. So they made their hypotheses and they said, oh, fuck, we were wrong. We thought religiosity would have something to do with it. Because people just didn't. Back then they thought people were driven by ideals, and people just aren't. They're not driven by ideals. We know this now. Nobody, whenever somebody says, oh, I'm driven, like I think of this, for example, never mind. I'm not going to get into it. We're talking about religion here. I'm not going to do that. But
people are not as idealistic as they think they are.
No, they do things and they search for reasons why they think it's true. And that's how you can bust people for inconsistencies. Like if it was the other way around, you wouldn't be able to do that. They'd be like, oh, well, it's this. But instead they go, it's this because it feels this way. I'm going to attribute it to this. And then you go, well, that's weird because you said this earlier and that messes with that. And then they're like, oh, yeah. And then they have to make that right. But that wouldn't happen if it was the other way around. If they always were consistent with their ideals, or made decisions based off ideals, you wouldn't find inconsistencies.
So bringing it to video games, like... Are the White Knights the ones who are just, they've got time to kill, they're kind of bored and they've done their daily quests? If that translates over, that seems to be the most important variable. But now we don't have to do a whole lot of ifs because someone replicated this inside of a video game world. Okay.
Yeah, have you heard about this?
This study?
This was in Cyber Psychology of Behavior, which I am a big fan of, obviously, because I like cyber psychology and I like behavior. But this one's got problems, but let's just talk about it. It looked at the same sort of thing. It said, now, there's the question that we just asked. Okay, great. That's how humans act in the real world, but man, there's so much going on. Big man behind the monitor effect, where people will cuss at you, and then if you ever met them in real life, they'd be like, just kidding. And you're like, yeah, that's what I thought.
Anonymity kind of tends to make assholes out of us all.
Yeah, there's no consequences, right? There's no social consequences. There's no physical consequences for making saying those horrible things about someone. So yeah, they're going to say it to attempt to hurt you. But yeah. So the way they did it was they had to complete a simple task, like get through a maze. It was typically a maze, or let me see. Yeah, and they were given a time constraint. So that's manipulated here as well. Now they didn't use real people they were helping in here. They used a computer people, and they did it in Half-Life 2 engine. So and the people they were to help were actually NPCs, which
feels like that would change how you view them.
Yeah, you would. As I'm reading this, I'm thinking to myself, that's going to fuck with everything. Like, people are trying to do that. But they were asked by the experimenters to pretend they were real people.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were asked to complete this as quickly or not. That was the first study, and then the second study they said, okay, but now let's look at what we're really interested in. Let's do it again, and this time we'll ask to help someone along the way. So as they're going through the maze, these NPCs would ask for help, and even if they were on a time limit or not, was manipulated between the two. They didn't do the thing about give a content of speech or anything like that. They were just seeing if time affected it. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is, despite all these like obvious methodological errors, they found similar results. Time pressure seemed to be the thing, and no time pressure significantly helped. So the average frequency of people that helped so they run through the maze, and whether there's people there or not is manipulated, and people to help, and then whether time pressure is manipulated or not. So people who had no bystanders and were running through the maze as quickly as possible, just by themselves for funsies, they ran it about the same time as people who the rooms with bystanders. So in other words, here's the important findings. The only thing that was important was time pressure, whether someone helped the NPC in that condition or not, which is, despite all the methodological errors here, I think that's pretty obvious now. But I think the interesting thing was that they helped at all. It was much less frequent than the other one, because 43% of people actually helped the person on the ground in the original experiment. So in the real experiment, 43% of people on average helped people. Yeah, for averaging across the groups, helped that individual. Here, only what percentage is that? So 20% of people helped that person, or a little less than 20%, 18% of people.
Which still feels high, because if someone told me to get through a maze as fast as possible and there were NPCs asking me for help, I'd be like, oh, that's clearly a trap to slow down my time.
Right.
Fuck them. Like, they're just ones and zeros, right? They're not real.
But then the person said, and they know there's that psychology experiment, and then they're like, oh, also pretend they're real people. Like, I kind of feel like that probably affected it.
Yeah, a little bit.
There's a fucking lot wrong going with this, but it was the first one of its kind, and it's a really interesting thought. So I'm surprised anyone helped at all. There was a more exaggerated effect, obviously, of time, probably because, what's the point of helping someone like that? But I just thought it was interesting that they began the simple beginning parts of this Good Samaritan study.
Do you think there's an empathy element here in play, this evolved sense of wanting to help other humans that's coming in? For example, when I play one-player games like Xenoblade Chronicles, when I'm running around and somebody needs help, if I ignore them, I feel a little bit like a dick, even though I know I shouldn't, because they're not real. I'm like, oh, shit, that little kid, she needs help, so I'll go back and help her, even though she's an NPC and not a real person. So you think that might be part of it, too, where even though in your head they're not real, you've immersed yourself to the point of being like, yeah, but still I should help her. She's a little kid.
That's funny. I wonder. That's a good point.
You ever caught yourself doing that in a game where you or you won't kill somebody because you're like, oh, that guard's got a family, I'm just gonna choke him out so he'll wake up later in a stealth game or something?
So you're saying, like, does real world empathies kind of mess with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So one way we could do an experiment on that, this would be fun, is get a person who is more, they give you a story, right? Mm-hmm. An NPC, and it's an NPC. You know it. You're playing the game. You're like, this is not a real person. This is Skyrim, and I programmed this. And the person's like, hey, I lost my kid, and I'm just torn without him. I don't know where he is. Or not kid. Let's say my husband. Yeah. And I'm just torn without him. Oh, my gosh, where is he? I can't. And then measure that compared to, will you go find my husband? He's in a cave.
Right.
And then
see which one gets more people to accept the quest and go up for it.
Yeah, or just have one, and then have one as a poster board. It's like husband missing, right?
Yeah.
And it's wife.
Like a
and
Witcher
then
3 style quest.
Yeah. And then do like with no narrative, and then a narrative. Look at those 4 groups, and then take a child that asks the quest, "Will you find my mommy?" or something like that. And if there's any movement at all in those, you're going to suspect that there are some empathetic variables there.
And games like companies like Blizzard probably have so much data like that, because they're tracking every little thing about it. You could see how many players take which quests and which ones actually do them. And yeah, that's interesting. Because I've caught myself just anecdotally being more inclined to stop and help somebody because I create a backstory for them, even though they're not real. I'm like, geez, that NPC needs my help. I got to go help out. Or blowing off NPCs who have frivolous quests. Like, when you break it down, it's all ones and zeros, and it's all like, you get X experience points and Y gold for doing this quest. But I'll be like, fuck you. I'm not going to find your lost flowers. Go do that yourself. I'm on a mission. But if it's like something important, I'm like, all right, yeah, I better help out. Those monsters kidnapped your brother. I'm going to go take care of it. Even though at the end of the day, the quest rewards might be identical. For one feels like it's worth my time more than the other one.
Well, there's also, so we'd also have to tease out the fact that you get that social comparison theory. You get to realize you're a stud if you help someone that can't help themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So you're like, oh man, I've got a sword and I'm super awesome. Because sometimes that motivates me too. They're like, we need someone, like, oh, our army can't get through here. Like in Witcher 2, for example, they're like, our army can't get through there in the very beginning, and they're like, where's the Witcher? And the king calls you forward, and you're like, fuck yes, and then you just destroy, right? So I'm more likely to do things like that as well, which make me feel that sense of mastery, the autonomy, that kind of thing.
Right, but like deliver this letter to my sister who lives in the next town over. Yeah. Like, nope, they have mailmen for that. That's beneath me.
Yeah. You're like, I'll tell you what I will deliver: this middle finger to your face, because I'm not doing that.
That'll be 3 copper for the postage.
It's such a complex question. It's so difficult to tease out in the video game world because it's different. We know it's different. People are ganking people and acting like dicks in there, whereas in the real life, that would be, if you just murder someone, there's obviously consequences. So you'd have to like set up consequences. You'd have to, there'd have to be quite a lot.
And that's what's really interesting. I might have talked about this before, but there's an anime called Log Horizon, it's one of those trapped in a video game world themed animes, which are becoming a genre into themselves. But what I like about this one is it really goes into the psychology of like the difference between an NPC and a PC and how do we treat NPCs so some players they just become basically sociopaths in that game because they're like, oh, these people aren't real. They're just going to respawn. So let's go and like murder whole villages and hold them ransom because they're just going to respawn anyway. And who cares? But other ones are like, no, they've got emotions. They feel things. They talk to you. They're more complex than NPCs. Like these are actual people. So it's just like, how do you treat the people who are not quote unquote real?
Yeah, it reminds me of this is something I do in every game. Okay, so I'll take Fallout 4 as an example, but it happens in Skyrim. It happens all the time. I go to the first encampment. I'm like, oh, finally, I made it here. Fought a bunch of people, and then I look at someone and I go here. Here's the thing that you asked for. I finally got it. And then they go, oh yeah, I don't want that. Can you bring to the next world? And I'm like, I sit there for a second. I'm like, and if shit's about to go down, because if I hit F5, that's quick save. Murder everyone. All been there. And then I just keep this blank face, and I'm like, it's murder time. F5. And
everyone take a drink.
Yeah, I just start slashing, and I drag their bodies around and throw them. I'm like, fuck you, in a pile, and I burn them. And then you're like. It's like in those comedies where you go to the person's head, or like you start killing them, and you're like, oh my god, and then it flashes back.
Then it flashes back to reality. Yeah, I'll do the same thing, like to add on to the are these people psychotic or not that our listeners are having right now with themselves. I'll walk into every game. First thing I'll do when I get into a city, I'll walk in, and my first question is, what are the boundaries in this game, right? So like a little kid will run by, and I'm like, hey kid. And if a game lets you kill a kid, that tells you a lot about what the game's comfortable with.
Yeah.
So I'll take my revolver, and I'm like, oh, your puppy's missing? Hold on a second. And I'll just line it up, and they're just smiling up at you. Like they can't tell that you're aiming a gun. They're not programmed to know. It was like, yeah, mister, can you help? I'm like, yeah, hold on a second. Just want to check something real quick. Save. I'll try and shoot. And usually games won't let you kill a child. So I'll be like, okay, that's my limit. It won't let me kill a child. So my next thing is I'll go to an adult and I'm like, oh, hi, how you doing? Aim. And I'll see if it lets me kill. I just want to see what level of depravity the game is cool with letting me do. And then I'll reload after. But yeah, I'm the same way. I really test the boundaries of human decency.
And sometimes it's just curiosity. This happened to me in BioShock Infinite, where you go into this bar in the very beginning at some point. You go into this bar and there's a bartender. He's like, hey, what can I get you, partner? And there's this guy laying on the bar with his head down. And you're like, is that guy awake or not? So I walked over to him and I'm trying to push the action button. I'm like, come on. And I walk over. I push over a bottle. He doesn't move. And eventually I'm like, save. I pull out my pistol. I was like, baby. And it turns out he's alive. He's like, oh, and he falls down. I was like, okay, so he's just sleeping. And I reloaded. So take a drink, y'all. But anyway,
sociopath drinking game.
It's funny, but yeah, I do that sort of thing. Speaking of cruelty, you guys need to go look up Sean Baby's experiments in Sims 2.
Yes,
it's hilarious. The guy crafts the worst experiments with making people go crazy and kill themselves in the game. It's the opposite of Good Samaritan.
Yes,
but one thing I don't like. I really can't stand this as a person. I don't get it when people do that kind of thing, like spawn camp newbies. Mm-hmm. you know, like for an extent, like if I come through and I get wrecked, I get rickrolled by like a group of people running through a region, and I'm on an MMO and I get wrecked. I'm like, well, that happens. I mean, you know,
risk of the game. Like that's what you get for rolling PvP.
Yeah, if they run around me, I usually I'm like, whoa, that's weird. That's cool. I appreciate it, but weird. Right. It's like I won't gank a super lobby, but I don't consider that a moral high ground. I just won't do it because I think it's rude. You know, there's no need for that. If they try to get out of the way, if they attack me, you're dead. But if they get out of the way, I'll just wave at them and I'll run by. And
like, if they give proper respect, right? If they pay,
those are comparison, bitch.
If they give you the respectful nod as you go by, like I know what you just did for me, and you're like, yes. Pay it forward, bitch.
Yeah. I know, dude. Here's another take a drink moment. So I'm in Shadow Fate Keep, and I'm going to run someone through the dungeon, right? Run them through. And as I'm running there, I see this this undead guy who was there. And he stops, and he was he had his little void walker. You know, he's a shitty little demon.
The void walker. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, and he stops. And he starts backing up, and I'm riding towards him on my huge mountain. And I was like, oh, yes. And I got off it. I walked up to him, and I waved at him. And then he kind of kept walking backwards, and I waved again. He didn't wave, and I'm like, wave, bitch. What's wrong with you? And he turns around, he starts running, he starts hopping. He doesn't have a mount. You know how the undead, when they do
they get the weird gangly hop.
And the void walker's just like, you know, hovering. And so I started running. I got on my horse and I ran. And then I just got off my horse, and I'm just following him. I'm just running after him. And the whole time he stops, he turns, he does a little twist jump to see if I'm behind him. And then he keeps running. I chased him for I don't know how many miles in game, but a long time. I wanted him to think that if he stopped, I was going to murder him. So he just, like, runs behind like a wall, and then I run back there too, and I consecrated the ground. And he's like, and he ran again. Like, it was hilarious. I tormented him a little bit. But
did you end up killing him?
No, I didn't kill him. But I just wanted to scare him because I wanted him to be like, hey. It's true. I wanted him to realize that I was being nice to him, right?
Like, just acknowledge it. Just
I was like, hey,
bow or wave or something.
Or, you know, give me everything you own, whatever. Or just say, you're so good, master. That's all I want. But it's true. Like that.
That triggers my instinct to take you down. That's like the wolf. You can't run.
I'm a wolf inside. Yeah, I won't take the moral high ground there. Yep, I'm that way. But, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like... the people who for hours on end can just ruin somebody's day on a game. I don't know. I like to think that maybe there are less of them than the ones who are just minding their own business and occasionally helping people.
Yeah, if they have time, right?
Yeah, if they have time.
Do you think that's what's causing the Black Knights to attack?
They just have too much free time?
Or I think it could even... I don't know. I think there's a certain fun just in that people have a hard time passing up.
Yeah, but why? What's fun about that?
Just to admit
to show the knowledge that you just made someone's day the worst?
I guess. I feel like it's the same people who play rogues. I know I'm making a large generalization there, but I don't know. I think
our friend who used to do that was playing a rogue when he did it.
Yeah, he was a dick. People are dicks. And the rogues, I feel like, are the worst. Because, like, you're back there, you're a priest. How do you get better than that, right? You're just back there and you're like, just heal my friends. And all of a sudden he's like, fuck you, like, as fast as he can. And
yeah,
like,
the mechanics of the game are built around, like, dirty fighting, right? So you're kicking people in the balls, you're throwing poison, you're sneaking around, you're backstabbing. The game rewards being a bastard if you're a rogue. So why wouldn't that attract bastards?
Yeah. It does, obviously. They're like the worst people I've run with have been hunters, but hunters attracted newbies in World of Warcraft, and then rogues. But they were just attitude problems. They could be in any level, and they were just
they're all prima donnas and.
Oh yeah. But
we used to have, this is a lot of topic, but remember our metric for finding out if a rogue was going to get us killed or not, or if somebody was going to get us killed at all. Yeah. So you do like a pickup group, and what was our question to weed out the idiots?
What was the class that backstabs and can stealth?
And if they typed out Rouge, it was just instant group kick.
Yep.
Like what the heck? You're like, nope.
This guy's too ignorant to know how to spell rogue. He's going to be playing this game for different reasons than we're playing.
Right. He's going to get everyone killed.
And it just had such a high correlation rate. Whether it was true overall or not, it was for our sample size.
Because the 4 or 5 times where we let those people stay, they got us killed.
Almost every time. Like, there was one time it didn't happen. And I was like, well, still not enough to overthrow the general consensus, but a trend, not a rule, but a trend.
Yeah. And I think there might be, I wonder if there's a personality, we're going a little off into the bushes here, but I wonder if there's a personality correlation between what class you're drawn to and like your temperament. Like are the assholes rogues, and are the altruistic people priests, or is there some kind of connection between what's fun for you to play mechanically and the kind of person you are socially?
Right. I'm sure. I mean, I doubt any of those rogues have, alts that are priests or tanks, They're
Yeah.
probably like mages and damage dealers.
This all-star mentality.
Yeah. Oh, God. I hate the mentality. People who, I don't like people who always lock in Assassin or ADC or something in a MOBA. I'm like, you didn't even try. You didn't even ask.
Remember that time we were playing D&D, and it was it's like you and Brian and Tim, and I think there were like John Little was there, and I was like, all right, we're playing a game. I'm just gonna run you through this little pre-made adventure. It's perfectly balanced for level 1 characters, so just make whatever you guys want. And you're like, fuck it, I'm a priest every time. I'm a warrior every time. I want to play damage for once. Like I want to have the big numbers for one time. So you locked in like Avenger.
And I had a whole storyline that you and I discussed.
Yeah,
like I was heavily invested in this.
Yeah, it was like a fleshed out backstory, really cool. Like you picked all these like kind of flavor powers. Like there's this one where these wings would burst out of your back and you jump up and like kill something. So you had this whole thing, and you're like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. What are you guys gonna make? And everyone else is like, yeah, I'm thinking also Striker. So, and then in D&D 4th edition, you had to have a balanced party or you were gonna wipe. And then this game of chicken, right? You were just like, well, I'm not going back to tank. That's what I always play. I want to play this for once.
For one time, yeah.
and they all showed up. There was it was like a warlock and a thief and a ranger, and then you.
And doesn't this show something about their mentality? Because the mentality of someone who always plays assassin, or a damage roll. Because I said this out loud. I was like, we're gonna wipe. We're not gonna make it through this. And they're like, we'll be fine. And I was like, you really think that that's not a crucial role? Like that?
Really think the whole reason we've been fine in the past is because you're so good at being a striker. So if we have 4 strikers, you'll be 4 times as good.
You don't realize that I'm saving your fucking ass every time as a support or as a damage or as a tank. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, it was a fundamental misunderstanding of the mechanics, and I wonder if that's not what drives these people.
And what happened in the first battle?
You got wiped. Ass is wiped by the simplest engagement.
Yeah, it was not even it was just a normal level 1 encounter, just out of the box. I hadn't tweaked it. You guys got wiped because you didn't have a party that could protect your squishy people. And then they were like, David, man, you're the death DM. You really wipe people. You're not afraid to kill players. I'm like, well, there's no other way that could have played out. You guys don't understand how party mechanics work. Not everybody can be the damage dealing all-star, the ADC or the assassin. It just doesn't work. Yeah,
I know. I don't like that mentality. It's like it's the mentality of like Donald Trump, where he's like, I build my own empire. I'm like, no, you didn't. Your workers built your empire, and you helped guide it. And even then, your return on investment, you got $1 million whenever you got right out of high school or right out of college. And if you just put it in the bank, the interest would have won more than you've got. You realize that, right? That's how compound interest works. They've done the numbers. You're actually a failure.
And if you would have less money than if you would have just shoved it up your ass.
Yeah, into shitty little low return government bonds. Yeah, you suck. You don't attribute it to yourself. Realize that there's people around you who did that, and it's that whole mentality, man. I just don't get it. When people say it takes a village to raise a kid, I think that's douchey. But the idea is right. The idea is that people around you are helping you. Like you see
same thing in games. Like you have to understand that the whole team is doing things behind the scenes. It's not just you. And I think that goes back to the Good Samaritans, the ones who actually understand how group dynamics work, and that in the background somewhere there's a priest healing me or there's a warrior that's peeling off the damage from me. Those are the people who just end up being good people. And then the ones who are like, oh yeah, we'll just all be assassins, I guess, because nobody wants to do the unglamorous jobs. Oh, weird, we all died. I guess the DM really hates us. He just made a hard encounter. Like they never, even after they all died, and after you had predicted that everyone would die, nobody was willing to say, "Oh, you know what? I should have made a cleric or something."
Yeah, because that's what contributes to us winning. It
just went right to like, oh, the encounter was too hard. The DM just went crazy on those bugs. Those bugs just finished us off.
It's just a misunderstanding of the group dynamic, exactly, of like why they have won in the past, which is just insulting to me. Someone who's always plays the set them up role, the guy who sets them up.
He's always throwing the layups. It's like, I got so many baskets that game. I'm so good.
Yeah, or like in here's the storm I play, Stitches. Sometimes you throw out a hook, you grab someone, you pull them in, and you murder the guy, right? Mm-hmm. Or I can't remember the guy in League of Legends. It's like the Thatches or something. I can't remember, but the hook guy. Mm-hmm. Like I'll play people like that and set up the kill, and then people are like, oh man, look at my damage at the end. And I always because it's a useful illusion to me. I always think they understand that I help there. Even though I obviously doubt
We
that
make fun of that in the group chat when we're in games. Like when one of us is playing support and the other one's playing damage, we'll always be like, "Oh, dude, I just started winning all of a sudden. I got really good. I got really good this game."
When you throw like the invincibility shield on you, and you just run in the middle of them, kill them all. It's this obvious glowing yellow shield of holiness.
Like, did you see that? Nobody could touch me. I'm so good.
I killed them all. They could touch me. I actually came out with more health than I went in. How did that even happen?
Or when I'm playing Abathur, whose whole point is like putting buffs. He doesn't do anything. He just sits behind the lines and puts buffs on people. And there's like this huge hat, this weird like bug that floats around your head and makes you faster and stronger and better. And I'm like, Jeremiah, poof. And all you want is someone to say thank you when you're Abathur, because you're not getting any glory. You're not in there. You're not in the thick of things. You're just making other people better. It's just like, wow, look at my damage. I'm doing so good. I'm so fast. Like, are you 25% faster? Because I just spent one of my talents on that, making you 25% faster on your attack speed.
It's a noticeable difference. It's a noticeable. You should be able to notice that difference.
Yeah. Plus, there's a giant bug over your head during that part where you were doing really well. It's hard to miss.
Yeah, you have to look. You can't even see your character because there's a glowing green shield that pops up around you. You have to kind of look around that to realize that there you are.
You're just in this cocoon of my help, and you're just doing it somehow.
Exactly.
There's all this green shit on me, but even despite that, I was doing really well.
So I guess the closing thought is that the real good Samaritans are the tanks and healers. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, take a moment, everyone, and just thank your tanks and healers. Whatever game you're playing, whatever game that has a team dynamic, and this Holy Trinity idea has been around for a long time, and it's in a lot of games. Just stop. If you're a damage dealer, that's fine. The world needs damage dealers. But just stop and look around and say, hey, you guys are the real unsung heroes here. Thank you. Thank you for making me good at what I do. And if you're a CEO, thank your janitors. Thank your middle management. Thank your guys in the factory. Just everybody, we're all in this together. We're all working together. There's a synergy involved. It's not just the all-star at the front.
Yeah, it's
everybody has a pit crew.
There's a real quick litmus test you can do. If these people quit, would I be crushed? Yes. Yes, you would. Yes. Like people are like, no, I'll just hire all new ones. I'm like, right. No, I'm not asking that. I'm not asking if you could, those specific people. I'm saying if that role completely was disappeared. Right. So if those guys all left, would you still be successful? No.
Right.
No, you literally cannot do it without that role. And so, yeah.
No matter what your job is, there's no one that's, I mean, I don't want to speak in absolutes, but there are very few people who have a job where it's all on them. There's nobody helping them.
Yeah.
Like even as a teacher where I'm the one person in the classroom, there's still people writing textbooks. There's all this stuff in the background. There's janitors coming in and emptying my trash every day. There's things happening that make it so I can do my job.
Yeah, and those are the real good Samaritans.
Yes.
That's our takeaway.
Just don't be a dick. Just be aware.
Be aware. Be aware, wolf. So cool. I guess we can wrap that up and we can move on to the feedback section. If you'd like.
I would like that.
All right, let's do it. Feedback. All right, this is the feedback section of the podcast where we talk about our interactions with the community. Yes. So we had a couple different things, a couple different interactions. One was by David Farrell on Twitter, and he was asking, did anyone ask for the math from the other podcast? Because I'd like to see the explanation of you blogged it or emailed someone. What he was trying to say was, I think, where I talked about power analysis.
Yeah, we were talking about the study, and I was saying, wait, so you can have a small sample size, but with good math, and it's just as accurate as a large sample size?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody on Facebook actually asked about that too. Yeah,
and I'd asked about that. I forgot to what exactly they were talking about, because someone was like, hey, I'd like to see the math on that. I was like, yeah, sure. But let me see. I don't have it now. So the specifics of what you're asking, obviously a huge question. Essentially, it's something called power analysis. Now, if you just Wikipedia that's we have to do this before every experiment to determine what our N is, what are the number of subjects that we're going to have. Because obviously, we're very interested in having as few as possible. Not as few, that sounds shitty, but we're not trying to do 8,000 every time before we can publish something. But we definitely don't want to commit a type 2 error, which is we don't want to to not see an effect and that be due to our low power, which means the less number of people. So there's actually math to do this. It's called power analysis. It's a whole thing, but I don't know how much people want me to get into depth. Usually when people ask questions like this, I've noticed in person, I start explaining it and their eyes gloss over it at some point. So I really haven't found that sweet spot of interesting and too much, so I'm not great at teaching. That's like not my greatest aspect, obviously. But yeah, I guess just ask if you look at power analysis and you have any questions, then I can answer any specifics. But
so power analysis is what they should Google.
Yeah, power analysis, and then maybe statistics if there's different kinds of power analysis, like weightlifting power, I don't know, but statistical power analysis. And that gives you the number, depending on what kind of analysis you're going to do. There are different ways to look at numbers, obviously, but depending on what kind of analysis you're going to do, if you have a robust one, then you're going to have more people. If you've got simple, like a one-way ANOVA or something like that, you'll be able to figure all this out. See, I don't ever know when I'm going too ham, but just look it up, and depending on what kind of analysis you need to do or how many variables and what kind of variables you have, then it depends. Then usually going to have a little more people. Even then, it depends on what your expected differences is. So like if you're looking at something like smoking and not smoking, you expect a large effect size because that, we've shown that has a lot of effect on health in general, lots of different kinds of health, hypotension, lung disease, overall chronic fatigue, things like that. You expect a large effect size. But if you have something small like media effects, you're going to expect that to be a small effect size. So that's going to take more people to see the difference. There's a lot of things that go into it, but just to keep it short, power analysis, statistics, Google that. If you have any questions, I will obviously talk about it. Cool.
Nice. We did get some emails as well.
Heyo.
So we got one email from Randall. He's listened, and he had some questions about the psychology approach that we suggested in early episodes, which I think he might be talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. So I asked a clarifying question, and he says, I know you consistently stated that Freud's approach is outdated and debunked. Before making an appointment with a psychologist, you said to confirm he or she did not practice Freud's approach and should try to find one that practices X approach. So yeah, that's evidence-based cognitive behavioral therapy, right? CBT?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's the one that we would endorse. But he also has a question that might be a good episode topic. He says, what is the fascination with elves in pop culture today? To bring it all together, Lego Lord of the Rings games and original books, Dragon Age, many other RPGs, War Machine Tactics, more specifically History of the Iron Kingdom's world, plenty of anime with elves or pointy-eared moe girls, Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, Tricksters and Fairies of English Lit, Shannara Chronicles, Heroes a Half-Elf, Heimskringla and Poetic Edda, Alfir, Monsters, and of course the Modern Association of Elves on Shelves. There are no half-dwarves in D&D, right? So I say elves, pointy ears because they are much more prevalent in pop culture today than, say, dwarves. Today's elves are more fairy than harmful monsters. From a psychological standpoint, how wide does adding pointy ears to a character or race change our perspective on them? In doujinshi, anime, and hentai, why is it more acceptable to mistreat or have relations with little girl creatures or pointy-eared aliens? Granted, Japanese cultural acceptance differ greatly from the U.S. David, if interested, Joy Hendry's Understanding Japanese Society from the Nissan Institute and Rathledge is a great educational book, roughly 250 pages. Also, A Sense of the World, How Does a Blind Man Become History's Greatest Traveler is another good book, in my opinion. Jeremiah, do you think HABA games are good developmental tools? A lot of general psych tips in WoW episode. Thanks. So yeah, that might be an interesting one to look at from both a literary and psychological analysis of why we tend to otherize elves when they're just humans with pointy ears half the time. So why do those pointy ears make us look at them differently?
Yeah, that is a good topic because there's a lot to say there. Yeah, maybe we should do a whole topic on that because that's obviously, I think he probably knows it's a loaded question. He literally asked it a bunch of different questions rather than just saying, what's that all about? So I think he understands there's a lot to answer there. Yeah, I think it's cool. I've got my thoughts on it, obviously. So yeah, I can look into it. I don't know much about HABA games. It's educational games, I think. Mm-hmm. But I don't know much about them. I can go look and determine what's up with that.
Yeah. And it sounds like an interesting book to check out. I'm always, as someone who's traveled a lot, I'm always fascinated by how different cultures actually are. Mm-hmm. It's one of the biggest, culture shock is a term we've coined for a reason because you just don't think about it until you leave what you're used to, how many things you take for granted that your culture does.
Yeah.
We got another email from Wardonis, who he's also curious about all the math stuff. So
cool.
We've addressed that. Also, he wants to ask if we consider the topic about character advancement. He had an idea for a topic called talent trees and character advancement. With WoW, I started losing interest in Cataclysm when they cut the talent trees in half, and lost all interest in Pandaland. Pandaland. Lost all interest in Pandaland when they cut it all together in favor of the multiple choice tree. I played Rift for a long time after, and I love the dynamic trees it's built on. I was so engrossed with its trees that nearly half my gameplay was spent theory crafting builds. I even earned a bit of a reputation in raids with my guilds because I would change specs constantly for the raid. I'd tweak and adapt builds on the fly, often between attempts. It's arguable whether my constant spec changes were beneficial or detrimental. I'm sure it was both at different times. I enjoyed SWTOR as well until they changed their trees as well. I was even hooked on Star Trek Online, which is hands down by far the most personally customizable MMO ever. I've probably dumped over 2K on that game. It's free to play. Anyway, I'd love to hear you guys talk about stuff like this, professions, and other things of that nature analytically, just the various aspects where planning is half the fun. So yeah, we kind of touched on that in our talk about XCOM, where just the strategy versus tactics, where the strategy is so fun just specking off different trees. But that might be fun to do an episode just about character advancement and talent trees and the different kind of spectrums you can find in gaming.
Yeah, that would be cool. I'm trying to think. Trying to recycle content, but I guess that'd be a good way to look at it differently. Yeah, that's fun. That would be cool.
I remember one of your favorite things about Final Fantasy X was the voice acting. No, just kidding. It was the leveling up, that weird kind of ring system they had.
Sphere grid, yeah.
Yeah, the sphere grids. So yeah, there might be some interesting things to look at. And we got one more email from Ches, probably Ches. Shay? I don't know. I'm bad at names. But they say, hello, Game Theory Podcast. I have a topic for you. I was just wondering if you guys would talk about the works of Jane McGonigal on the show. Jane McGonigal is both an academic and a game designer. Her first book, Reality is Broken, is a survey of the information we have on the positive effects of gaming and theories on how games can be designed to include them. Her second book, Super Better, is based on specific research on a game-based approach to self-improvement. I'm not in the psych world, but I found her work drawing parallels between positive psychology and game design to be fascinating. I am interested in your thoughts on the subject, and she includes a link to get us started. So, or he includes a link. Again, bad names, but janemcgonigal.com/my-book. Have you heard of Jane McGonigal?
I haven't, which is weird. I've read... I mean, up to a year ago, I was up on every piece of literature, but I must have missed it. Jane McGonigal. Oh, there it is, Jane McGonigal. Okay.
Huh. So that might be
a TED Talk or something.
Yeah, so that might be...
Oh, okay, I know who this is. Yeah.
Okay, so you're familiar with her?
I didn't know I don't think she's formally educated. I think is she? Maybe she is. Does she have a PhD? I think she hasn't published anything. No. Oh yeah, she got a PhD in performance studies. So yeah, she's not a researcher, but I saw her talk that she gave in TED, and it's woefully uninformed, but I think she's a great speaker, and if she wrote a book, I imagine it was well researched. So yeah, I'd love to read it.
Might be worth checking out. I'm seeing a TED Talk on games making a better world and World of Warcraft. So yeah, would be an interesting conversation topic if nothing else.
Yeah, my book. Yeah, I'll check that out. Thanks.
And lastly, occasionally I'll get messages on Facebook from fans that I don't notice for a long time. So I got one from somebody who's actually getting his master's degree in. He's got his bachelor's in English Lit and Film Studies, and he's going to the United Kingdom to get a master's, and considering becoming a teacher because that's where the big money is. And no, I'm just kidding. There's no money. But anyway, he's been listening for a while, and he says, thanks for all the awesome work. He said it would be nice if we threw in a bit more literary theory to represent us oppressed humanities majors. Not everything has to be empirical. Hermeneutics and dialectics can turn into praxis and revolution. So yes, I am dropping the ball on. Jeremiah is actively researching right now,
right?
And I have not been in grad school for 4 years, so I'm a little bit lazier on the literary analysis side. So I'll step it up.
This, by the way, this Super Better. I think I've started an audiobook of this, and I was listening to it. I was running 2 years back or so. I think I'll have to get back on that. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, if it's on audiobook, I'll pick it up too. For we can do a little book club and talk about it in a couple weeks.
That'd be cool. Also, definitely humanitarian. I think is awesome. In fact, that I was just flirting with the idea this morning of contacting a writer because I've had it on my to-do list for this podcast for a while, and talking to them about how they go about writing stuff and if they use any literary theory. You know, like you mentioned man versus wild earlier. You know, it's a bit not misogynistic, a bit sexist. It could be anyone versus wild, human versus wild, but. Yeah, those theories. I wonder if they drive people because I think those are fascinating. I think about those whenever I do campaigns, like, you know, man versus what's the technology or something like that. I thought about that one.
Yeah, the breaking things down story level is really fascinating. And speaking of that, I do have a commitment. Remember Michelle, we had her on a few episodes ago. She has committed to playing Life is Strange and then weighing in. There's a lot of actual literary parallels that I missed when I played through it that ties into American literature on that one. So
cool.
We can approach it from that angle as well. So for those of you wanting more humanities literary analysis, she is pretty sharp for that stuff. So that'll be sometime in May.
That'd be awesome. Good suggestion, man. I appreciate it. We'll get on that. And that's it from my side of things. I don't tweet a lot, so I apologize. I just don't. I guess I'm busy, and so whenever I think to do something, I just put it on the Facebook page, or even then, I haven't done that a lot lately right now because I am just not doing a lot of social stuff right now. I'm on a time crunch until September. Then I'm just, wow. I've got to apply for licensure. I've got to take the test, which is like a bar, so I'm studying like crazy. I've got to get all my hours together, and I've got to, for my clinical hours, I'm not going to bore you guys. I got a ton of shit to do that I'm just constantly doing. And then I've got the sacred time at night that I play games. So social media is just not something I get on too much because it makes me go down the rabbit hole and I never get my work done.
Yes. And we have, I forgot to reinstall iTunes for after my computer died. So I don't know if we have any new iTunes reviews, but Keep those coming. They have slowed down as they tend to do once you get into the 70s. But more iTunes reviews, always helpful. We will do better at getting the show out to you. And in return, if you can give us that sweet, sweet 5-star rating, we would be very much appreciative.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So yeah, it encourages us to move forward and secure more guests and things. Because when you're putting this out to the void, occasionally it's like, do people still find this meaningful? I hope they do. And
it actually helps us get better guests because the more ratings we have, the more visibility we have, the easier it is to book people who feel like it's going to be not wasting their time. Because we're like, hey, we have thousands of listeners. It's like, yeah, everyone probably says that. But if you can point to your show on iTunes and it's got a lot of reviews, it makes you look more legit.
Mm-hmm. True that. But, well, good. I hope this is a good podcast. I feel pretty good about it. So I'm ready to call it quits.
All right, so we will see you next week. We have a lot of show topics to choose from, so could go any way. Thanks. Keep sending ideas, though. That's really half the work of the show is thinking about something new that we haven't talked about in the past 100+ episodes.
Yeah, especially from the interesting to the audience point of view, because some things we find interesting, you guys may be like, that's weird, but so
right.
Yeah, let us know. Thanks a lot. Well, cool. We'll see you guys next week.